Duty first. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Steve Carpenter, the commander of 3rd Battalion, 13th Field Artillery Regiment, 75th Fires Brigade, and I'm a Big Red 1 soldier. I'm also the father of 4 great kids and the husband to a great wife. You'll understand why I'm telling you this, but I'm the son of a Hall of Fame college football coach. I also had 2 great parent role models as I was growing up, and I've had a great Army experience. I tell you that because that's a different background story than a lot of our soldiers. The goal today is really just to continue a discussion that General Funk started when he took command of the Big Red 1. It's a complex topic. It's how to develop a positive command climate. The goal isn't necessarily to talk about everything today, but instead to continue a dialogue that's been occurring since General Funk took command. And to be honest with you, I'm proud to say, since I gave this LPD to the 1st Infantry Division Command Group, the division staff, all the brigade commanders and sergeant majors and battalion commanders and sergeant majors, this dialogue has continued across 1st Infantry Division. Now, at some parts during this presentation, some of you will start thinking to yourself, well, that all briefs well. Sunshine and rose petals. But I'm here to tell you, I've been in command almost 15 months, and what I'm going to dialogue about today, it's a lot of hard work. And you get plenty of time to recommit during winter and summer transitions, especially in the active duty. What I'd like to do real quick is orient you real quick to the slide. I'd mentioned that General Funk is my division commander. Just like my message needs to be nested with my brigade commander, Colonel Mike Eastman, the commander of the 75th Fires Brigade, it needs to be nested with General Funk's pillars of the division, his vision, his leadership philosophy. So that top left block just shows, that's the alignment that this discussion is going to have with what General Funk speaks about on a daily basis. I'll tell you, if you ever met Major General Funk, you'll know he never finishes dialogue with leaders without telling them, be somebody's hero. I want to fill you in on the operating environment I stepped into at the beginning of June of last year. In May of 2012, the 313 Field Artillery Regiment, the Red Dragons, took a unit risk inventory. That's something that's done across the Army to give you a snapshot on your soldiers. It doesn't just focus on discipline, it focuses on overall risk of your organization. When I took command, I was handed the unit risk inventory, and I discovered that 47% of the soldiers in my formation didn't trust a single person in the chain of command. 49% of the soldiers in the formation were less than satisfied with their lives. 66% of the population actually thought that the Army made their lives worse. And 52% of the population said there was no way in heck they would ever re-enlist in the Army. Just, there's no way they'd re-enlist. They didn't even say there was a slight chance they would re-enlist. On top of that, the formation has the common characteristics that are across the Army. Whether you know it or not, 70% of the soldiers that are in the Army or that are coming into the Army come from a dysfunctional household, some level of dysfunction. 20% of the soldiers that are entering the Army come from a household of abuse, whether physical or emotional abuse. And you probably have figured this out. A lot of our younger leaders, as well as the soldiers, they suffer from what's called social anxiety or social dysfunction. Because of the digital nature of how we communicate these days, our young 21-year-old lieutenants, our 18 to 22-year-old soldiers, they spent the majority of their high school lives communicating that person-to-person relationship using their thumbs and not their mouth. It's very easy to handle rejection when you can just unfriend somebody on Facebook. It's easy to take the answer no when you're taking it from a text message instead of face-to-face. And because of that type of digital nature of communication that's occurred, well, that creates an environment where we actually have leaders, lieutenants in our formations, soldiers in our formations, young NCOs that are uncomfortable operating in groups. And as you can probably figure out, that's not a great characteristic to have in this organization. Would you agree? The next piece is while that may have been their upbringing, we do have some soldiers that come into the formation that have had continued bad coaching inside the Army. Right? I know we're trying to weed out that population that isn't going to invest themselves in the soldiers, invest themselves in leadership, but we have to realize that it does exist. So I want to make 2 points. The first point I want to make is about great teams. One of the things that I do, and if you haven't taken command yet or you're still in command, the first thing I do during an in-brief, or I'm talking to pre-command courses here at the Battery Commander First Sergeant course or here, is I ask the population to think about the greatest organization, the greatest team, the greatest group that they're ever a part of. It can be a military organization, an athletic team, the church choir, a play group. It can be their family. It can be a group of close friends. I ask them to think about that great group, that organization, that team, and I ask them to list all the characteristics that describe that organization or team. And as you can see from that list up here, and I can say with great sincerity, not once in a decade, in 10 years, have I ever had people say that the most important characteristic of that great team or organization or group was that we scored the most points, we killed the most enemy, we saved the most lives, we sang the best, we shot the best, we ran the fastest, we were the strongest. All those characteristics point to performance. Every single time I've asked the question, what's the most important characteristic that describes that team you're thinking of in your head, it's these terms. Over 10 years, those are the most predominant terms that come out. And they're all a reflection of attitude. Now, I'm not saying attitude is everything. You've probably heard that. That's kind of a cliche. But I will say that it's the most important thing. We all realize that in this business, the United States Army, performance is important. But I'm saying it starts with attitude. I'm saying that if you have a positive attitude in your organization, when you go out to communicate and maneuver and shoot, your performance is going to be better. You're going to develop a stronger team. You're going to have a better output. Now, I'm a strong believer that soldiers join this organization right here because they want to be identified with a winner. And in their words, in the leaders' words, and I don't care if we're talking about general officers or brigade commanders or privates and specialists that are coming in the Army, those are the words that create a winner. So again, I challenge you. Ask the question. Ask your formation. Ask them, think about the greatest team you've ever been a part of. Again, it can be your family, it can be a military organization, a sports organization. And then once you get that list of words up there, and I promise you, it's going to look a lot like this, then challenge them and say, what's preventing us from becoming that organization? When I took command of that group that said 66% said that the Army makes my life worse, 47% said, I don't trust anybody in my chain of command. Trust me, I got a lot of feedback. A lot of feedback. But in that is a level of consensus. And then all I have to do is ask them to commit. Let's move towards becoming that type of organization. And I'm really proud to say that, after 6 months of hard work, we were an organization where the majority, instead of having a negative approach, thought about opportunity, empowerment. They understood that in our formation, excellence was the expectation and not the exception, like it was when I took command. And it's because of a lot of hard work by young leaders, and we had to gain a lot of momentum in the process. The next point I want to make is the line of leadership. And there's a quote up there by Alexander the Great. During LPDs, OPDs, even when I'm talking to soldiers, I ask them, who are the greatest leaders that have existed throughout history? And to be honest with you, the first thing that comes out is everybody wants to name all the generals that they can possibly think of that have existed throughout history, especially the ones from World War II. I say, okay, besides the United States generals, who are the greatest leaders throughout history? Jesus of Nazareth comes up. I'm not going to talk religion, but with 2.5 billion followers today, he's doing pretty good, right? Other ones, you've got Martin Luther King, right, a national hero. Gandhi, a hero in India. Nelson Mandela, a hero in South Africa. Winston Churchill, a hero in England. And I was trying to explain to my leadership, and it was almost divine, that one night, on a Sunday night, I was walking through the barracks and I heard the soldiers carrying on a little bit in a room. And I knocked on the door and they opened up and said, hey, what's going on, guys? And they said, oh, we're watching this great movie, Robin Hood. Robin Hood, the new one with Russell Crowe. I said, what are you guys carrying on about? He's like, oh, I just uncovered this stone and there's a sweet quote underneath the stone. I said, oh, well, what's the quote? And they said, rise and rise again until lambs become lions. I said, yeah, that is a pretty good quote. Do you know where it comes from? And they all looked at me like I wasn't thinking straight, and they said, "What are you talking about? We just told you. Russell Crowe said that." Right? I said, "Well, go ahead and take your iPhone, hop on your computer, and Google it, and we'll talk about it tomorrow at Command Maintenance Formation." Rise and rise again until lambs become lions, lambs to lions. That whole methodology exists in a lot of Judeo-Christian nations, particularly England. In the Bible, and again, I'm not going to talk religion, but as I mentioned, Jesus of Nazareth does get brought up as a great leader. The lambs that followed Jesus in the New Testament were the disciples. And when Jesus rose, the lambs carried the message out to the world. They became lions, leaders themselves. That quote from Alexander the Great, even though he became king of Macedonia 336 BC before Christ, it kind of resonates here. And the point I'm trying to make is the line of leadership is not the leader, this insurmountable warrior. It's the message, the cause that they're projecting. In the Bible and Revelations, a lot of people think that the lion is God, but it's not. It's the Word of God. When you talk about Martin Luther King, he had a powerful message. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate can't drive out hate. Only love can do that. Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. Abraham Lincoln, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Winston Churchill, in June of 1940, when he stood on the steps of the House of Commons, declared that they would never surrender, regardless the price. They would never surrender their island. He rallied an entire nation. Nelson Mandela, in 1994, when he stated that when we embrace our own fear, we liberate others to do the same. When Alexander the Great, one of those great leaders that we're talking about, says, "I do not fear an army of lions that are led by a lamb. I fear an army of sheep that are led by a lion." He doesn't fear an army of sheep, common men that are led by some great warrior. He fears common men that are led by a great cause. So another thing I challenge you to do is ask your formation. Ask them, what's the message that we're projecting as a battalion? We have some people in here that have been in command for over a year. Ask the question, what's the message that we're projecting as a battalion? Is it a message like the one that I received when I took command, or is it one of empowerment, of hope, of opportunity? But it's a great way to get a sensing outside of the normal sensing questions. Talk to your officer corps. Are they lambs or are they lions? They know what your message is. Are they projecting it? And you'll hear me say this more than once. At the end of the day, that message, that cause, it's not about what we say or what we write down. It's about what we do, who we are. Now we'll move to approach. Now, I just said it. Approach, leadership philosophies. Well, it's easy to write down and it's easy to say. It's much more complicated to go out and be that, to be a leader, to be a lion, to carry that message through your actions. But what I want to discuss with you a little bit are some of the things that we did in our battalion. And again, it was a lot of hard work. It's still hard work. Some of the things we did in our battalion that are outside of traditional mission essential tasks or the dictated leader-to-led risk mitigation strategies that we use in the Army. The first is a leadership philosophy. I think leadership philosophies should be pretty short. General Funk's is one line. In Red Dragon land, I think that all leaders should, one, believe in themselves, set high goals, work hard, be dedicated, and have pride. Because we think that's what makes a winner. Because once my leaders do that, they can then impact soldiers, develop other leaders by getting soldiers to believe in themselves and set high goals and work hard and be dedicated and have pride. Now, belief in yourself, powerful self-image. Simply put, if you or a soldier looks in the mirror, and I'm not talking about physical attributes, and you're not proud of what you see, what are you doing to close the gap? And that's where goal plan really helps. In our goal plans, we ask our soldiers to be abnormal. I ask our leaders to be abnormal and to support the soldiers, not just in the pursuit of their professional goals, but in pursuit of their personal goals as well. Education goals, vacation goals, family goals, financial goals, because it's all important. We ask them to be abnormal. It's not the human condition. It's not human nature to seek excellence. It's not human nature to go out and set high goals and to strive to achieve them. It's also not human nature to support others in the pursuit of that goal. And that's a hard reality. But at the end of the day, human beings tend to choose the path of least resistance to an objective. And human beings tend to get uncomfortable because you know what? If you're out seeking to pursue your goals, that doesn't make him feel so good about sitting on his rear end and doing nothing. So he's got a choice to make. Death and choices. They're the only two things that are absolute in the world. He can either raise his game or he could seek to discourage you. We ask that our soldiers and our leaders raise their game and encourage folks to achieve their goals. You've all heard the term that leader-to-led relationships, marriages are 50-50 situations. Have you ever heard that? Well, that's bull. It's 100-100. My wife deserves everything I got because that's the only way I can expect her to give me everything she's got. Same thing with that leader-to-led equation. 100% of what I got as a leader, only then can I expect 100% of what that soldier has to give to the formation. Would you agree? So I never liked that 50-50 equation. That means we're both given 50% of what we got. That bridges into our family philosophy. Again, it's really simple. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people raise eyebrows when I start to dialogue about it. In our formation, I don't care if you're the sergeant major's wife or the newest private that's coming into organization's wife, a battery commander's child or a specialist child. Everybody has equal value. Everybody has equal value. The next piece is respect. That's our going in position. You'll hear me say this more than once too. Every family member in our formation deserves to be respected, regardless of whether it's a 40-year-old couple coming into your formation, it's their third or fourth shot at life, or someone coming right out of high school married with children maybe, entering your formation as a young 18, 19-year-old. Everybody deserves respect. Because I think that's how we earn trust. Now, some people raise eyebrows when I say equal value. Whoa, the first sergeant's wife should be treated special. Well, no, not in my formation. Not in my formation. Because at the end of the day, we talk about family support. Trust. Would you ever trust somebody that doesn't respect you, that doesn't treat you with value, with equal value? I've never had somebody say yes. And here's the next piece. We talk about family support. Would you ever seek support from an organization, from a human being that you didn't trust? And again, in a decade, I've never had someone come back and say, yes, I would do that. I would seek support from someone that I don't trust. I would trust somebody that doesn't respect me. Again, this is a simple equation, guys, not so simple to do. When I came into this organization, we had 5 active volunteers. By November, 5 months later, we had 124 active volunteers. Now, we've had a downward trend this summer, not down to 5, but we're in the 80s right now because we lost a lot of folks this summer. A lot of quality families. But I expect it to peak back up in November because quite frankly, that's when people get settled into school and they just volunteer more. Now, I will say this. A first sergeant's wife, a sergeant major's wife, they're our best role models because they know what it's like, many of them that have had long marriages, to be a private's wife, a specialist's wife, a junior non-commissioned officer's wife, a senior non-commissioned officer's wife. So they've got that credibility. They've been successful doing that. But the majority of our volunteers are specialist wives, sergeant's wives. And you know what? That makes sense because that's the majority of our population. So I think that should be a goal of yours, to be well represented. And again, it doesn't always have to be the commander's wife that's the leader, right? Because remember, leader is about influence, okay? It can be a sergeant's wife that can have just as much credibility. The next piece I actually stole from the Ritz-Carlton. All right? I don't claim to be the Ritz-Carlton as a formation, but our motto that the soldiers actually decided on and voted on at the 6-month point in my command is, Red Dragons, we do excellence. And I told them this story a couple months into command. This guy, Horst Schultz, in 1998, he was the president of the Ritz-Carlton. That's the point that they decided that they wanted to be a premier luxury hotel and have a global impact. Well, when they started bringing in new employees, and the first time he did this was at the New York Ritz-Carlton, he actually wanted to meet with each one of them so he could deliver the vision. And he'd trap them a little bit. He'd say, so for you guys, is good good enough? Is good good enough for you guys? And it has people kind of confused by the question, looked at him and was like, yeah, good's pretty darn good. Good life's good. He's like, yeah. He's like, well, if good is good enough for you, then take your ASS down to the Holiday Inn down the street. Because we're the Ritz, baby, and we do excellence. Right? And it resonated in that company, and it became a motto for them. New employees that came in, it was understood that, hey, look, good ain't good enough in this hotel chain. We expect excellence. Just like we ask our soldiers to be abnormal in Red Dragon Land and seek excellence, not just mediocrity, because that's normal. The next piece, I actually got this from Jim Hunter. I was fortunate enough when I was down with 1st Cavalry Division to hear him speak on the servant leader model. But he made the comment, he said, in a good business, in a good military organization, respect is not an option. It's a condition of employment. And that really resonated with my formation. Now, I know a lot of people, especially, to be honest with you, the most pushback I get is probably from some sergeant majors sometimes, but they say, no, respect is earned. But like I said, I truly believe that soldiers join this organization to be identified with a winner. So respect is our going in position. That's our going in position. Now, it's our job as leaders to teach soldiers and junior leaders what it takes to be respected in this profession. As an entry point, probably discipline, the union of values and standards. And add to that probably a level of proficiency in whatever your MOS is. And as you go on, that threshold begins to raise a little bit more. But I think that's important, because if we don't teach them how to be respected in this organization, they're going to seek other peer groups where they will be respected, and you might not get the outcome that you want. You might not get the outcome that you want. You've all heard of Mother Teresa, right? Well, Mother Teresa was asked, what's the single life lesson that you've learned? And she said, people crave respect more than they crave food. That is a very powerful statement from a woman that has seen a lot of starving children in her life. Would you agree? Power versus authority. Having rank on your chest can, if you choose to, give you a lot of power. But good leadership, and again, this is just my opinion, but I think you'd agree, that doesn't come from power or coercing, forcing people to do our will. I think it lies in authority, and the use of authority or using our positive influence to get people to do what is right because they choose to do it. And the key there is positive personal influence. I mentioned Jim Hunter. He used the word love a lot when he was dialoguing, and sometimes that makes people in this uniform feel uncomfortable. But he said, love in business, love in the military is about sacrificing of yourself to provide for the legitimate needs of others. And that's key. The needs of others, not the wants of others. He actually described providing for the needs of others as servant leadership, giving people what they want all the time, slave leadership, in an area we don't want to go to in this organization. Now, loving a soldier, giving them what they need, sometimes means you got to put your arm around them. A soldier's having problems, maybe problems at home, problems financially, right? And sometimes when they mess up, it's having the courage and giving them what they need and kicking them in the butt, figuratively, not literally, all right? But when you bring them into your office and you're counseling them or you're punishing them, you're doing that because you care about him enough, you love him enough to give him what he needs. But you're also going to do what it takes to get him back on track, whether it's in this profession or not. Again, the key, giving soldiers what they need, not necessarily what they want. Consistency of message. Just like General Funk, the entire time he's in command, he's not going to change his leadership philosophy. He's not going to change the pillars of the division. When you interact with soldiers, the messaging should be fairly consistent. Now, leadership's not about style, okay? You've got President Reagan over here, President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt over here. You've got John Wooden, right, Hall of Fame basketball coach over here, Bobby Knight, Hall of Fame basketball coach over here, Mike Krzyzewski, probably a little bit over here, okay? We've got Patton over here, Bradley over here. All successful leaders, divergent leadership styles. But the key is consistency of message. Now, the handout that I gave you guys that you should have received, I just included 6 messages. Now, this is in the written form, but I included the first 6 command messages that I tried to utilize and I wanted to resonate throughout the formation. Now, where would this go? This would go in a newsletter, on Facebook, email, social media, places like that. I told you, leadership's not about style, but my personal style, I choose to dialogue and message to relay the cause of the formation at command maintenance formations, at motor pool closeout formations at the end of the week. Because I like to bring in the guys real close and dialogue with them in a locker room style format. But that makes sense, right, for a guy like me? I told you, I'm the son of a Hall of Fame college football coach. I grew up on a football field. I grew up in a football locker room. I watched my dad, a guy I consider the greatest leader, my role model, discuss values, standards, deliver his message, his cause to his players like that for 30 plus years. So naturally, I'm comfortable there. You just need to decide as a leader, where are you comfortable? Where can you best reach your soldiers? And to be honest with you, active duty, that's a little bit more predictable. If you're in the National Guard or Reserves, you literally need to be deliberate and plan when you're going to engage your soldiers, when you're going to relay that message, that cause. And to be honest with you, there's a great opportunity in the National Guard that they'll go back home and share that light of leadership with their families. Goal-oriented counseling, okay? Now, this is actually in part of the comprehensive soldier fitness model, but I don't see a whole lot of people utilizing it, okay? But in order to do what we wanted to do, which was to establish a culture of excellence in our formation, we thought it was imperative, okay? Now, the goal-oriented counseling we do is in addition to the regular performance counseling or soldier-to-leader risk reduction tool that is directed across the Army, okay? What we do is we ask our soldiers to, 1, think big, dream big. 2, figure out what your shortcomings are. Give yourself an honest assessment. 3, develop a plan of action to overcome those shortcomings. And then 4, commit. And during this counseling, we expect our leaders to do a heck of a lot less talking and a heck of a lot more listening. And in that process, when you're developing that plan of action on the back of the 4856, or to be honest with you, sometimes that can be threatening to soldiers, especially if they've been in trouble, right? Doing it on a separate form, that it is a soldier's plan that is enabled by great leaders, great coaches, great role models. You're teaching them a life skill. Trust me, it will improve their marriage. It will improve their relationship with their kids, with their friends. If they ask their spouse, if they ask their kids, hey, what are your goals? What can I do to enable you, to facilitate so you can accomplish those goals? And it creates a bridge to outsourcing. Because to be honest with you, there's going to be a lot of issues that soldiers may have that maybe their first line supervisor, their platoon sergeant, platoon leader can't deal with. So you can outsource to other leaders in NCOs, chaplains, financial counselors, education counselors, but it's a team effort. It's important that your folks understand that. Here's a great example. Because I have this example. The 25-year-old staff sergeant attempting to talk to a 38-year-old specialist who's married with 4 kids on what his family goal plan is going to be. He probably lacks the expertise to give him any meaningful feedback. So it's okay to go outside, even the chain of command, find that guy some help, and then support him. The 2 goal plans that I gave you guys, one of them is an officer, one of the better officers I've observed in my career, and one of them is a specialist. I chose both of these because, like a lot of our population, they come from dysfunctional backgrounds. And these 2 particularly are part of that 20% that came from a background of abuse. The officer endured so much emotional abuse in his childhood that a book was written about it by his older brother. And the specialist's dad was a meth addict who beat his mother every single day of his life growing up. His older brother, meth addict, beats his wife every day too. When he was 14, he decided that he was tired of seeing his mom get beat up by his dad every day, and he tried to stop him. And his dad, luckily he was intoxicated, shot at him in the kitchen. And as he ran out the back door, he took another shot at him and blew the bark out of the side of the tree by his left ear. That night, this soldier, at 14 years of age, went into his parents' home after his dad had passed out, pulled his .45 out from underneath his pillow, and held it to his dad's head. He said he held it there for it felt like 5 minutes. He was shaking so hard and just trying to build the courage to pull the trigger. And then he put the .45 underneath the pillow, went back out into the woods. I'm convinced that that's the moment in this kid's life when he decided that he wanted to be the first generation of excellence in his family. Because that's tough, breaking out to be that first generation, addicted to excellence, not addicted to abuse, addicted to abuse of alcohol, drugs, domestic violence. But he's one of our more successful soldiers, and I'll tell you, I'm going to work my butt off. He's one of the guys I'm working with directly. I work with a lot of our soldiers. I think he has a great narrative. He's a great leader. He just finished WLC. He's going to be a sergeant next month. To be honest with you, I'd like to get him a hip pocket or green to gold scholarship, because that's what his goal is. To go into an ROTC program, to play baseball in college, something he never thought was possible, to buy his own home. But he can get there. He just needed some people to show him the way. How do I assure I'm getting this thing right? Well, let me tell you, this goal-oriented counseling thing, I probably started on day 1 because I really believed in it. At the 4-month point, we weren't even close. I don't know if I wasn't getting the buy-in or people just didn't know how to do it. So what I did was I took all my officers. It wasn't an off-site. It was just off-post away from everything. And for a day, I just taught them how to do goal-oriented counseling. And once those officers showed me through their own plans, they validated, certified that they knew how to do goal-oriented counseling, I had them do their senior non-commissioned officers. And from there, it was like branches of a tree. Now, you're going to have resistant populations. Here's what I've seen. My sergeants and staff sergeants, and again, it's not the majority. It's a very small minority. But they tend to be the most resistant. And it's amazing why. Because quite honestly, they didn't get treated with that respect, with that value when they were privates and specialists. So they want to punish their privates and specialists so that they don't feel that the privilege of having someone care about them. I think that's just as criminal as a parent that is abused as a child is so angry about it that they abuse their children because they want them to suffer as much as they did. Instead of making the decision, the personal decision, to be that first generation of excellence. I mentioned to you, I had 2 great role models as parents. But my parents, they come from a history of addiction. Where they grew up, coal mines, rock quarries. A lot of World War II vets, a lot of Vietnam vets, a lot of alcohol, a lot of domestic violence. But they decided to be the first generation of excellence in their families. And they moved all over the country in pursuit of that excellence. It started with my dad, 17 years old, on a ship to Parris Island, South Carolina. He says if he could have swam, he would have jumped. But because they decided to be that first generation of excellence, the same challenge I try and give a lot of my soldiers, a lot of my non-commissioned officers, it made life a heck of a lot easier on me. Now, I definitely didn't come from a life of privilege. Back when I was growing up, football coaches made about $18,000. I thought my dad was really strict. But you know what? I had everything I needed to put myself in a position to win in life. I didn't have everything I wanted, but I had everything I needed. And you know what? My girls, I said I have 4 kids, 4 girls. They're going to be in a better position to win in life because I had a great role model. I can be a great role model for them, and they can decide, they can make the choice to be the 3rd generation of excellence in my family. And I'm really proud of that. The whole soldier approach. 2 pages. It's part of the handouts that you have. To be honest with you, I've probably talked about a lot of things in this. What I want to hit on is it's the comprehensive soldier fitness model, the 5 dimensions, right? But in terms of physicality, the survival dimension, it's not just about PRT. What are your soldiers putting in their body? How much sleep are they getting? Are they getting faint in the motor pool in August because after a hard day at PT, they go out and drink 2 monsters and think they're going to be able to survive in 100-degree heat in a motor pool? We expect our leaders to know that. Social. We do peer group evaluation, analysis. Why? I mentioned, if we don't teach them what it takes to be respected in this in this organization, they're going to find another group, another peer group to fall into where they are respected. That's a human need. I mentioned Mother Teresa, it's her lesson in life, to be respected. So if they don't feel respected in this organization, they will seek another peer group, another organization where they will be respected. And it may not be the result that you want. Community outreach. That is a leader development opportunity. And to be honest with you, in active duty, we do it with some of our partnerships, community partnerships. In the reserves and National Guard, you have more of an opportunity to do that because you're spending a lot of time in the civilian sector as well. In our community outreach programs, we stress this. The best thing we can do for our soldiers is be great role models, great husbands, great wives, great parents. And we can go ahead and learn how to be better role models, and we can put our better role models out in the community so that they can impact kids that maybe come from dysfunctional households, much like our soldiers. Cameron University ROTC, we reached out to them and said, hey, I know that you guys nickel and dime and get people to come out and talk to you. We would like to go ahead and establish a partnership with you because in my eyes, that gives my non-commissioned officers and officers an opportunity to stand in front of people to teach them life lessons. They get better and we get better. Wilson Elementary School. It's easy in outreach to give donations. This summer, we went out there when we painted every room, every hallway in that school. We fixed their whole area up, their playgrounds, did landscaping, made their area look really nice, and an area they could be proud of. But the most important thing we do is we provide role models on the first day of school, on field days, during school events. And the teachers enable that, or they facilitate this, by identifying the higher risk students that are in that school. But let me tell you, they don't even need to identify these kids. Because you know what? You can pick them out as soon as you walk into a room. Another reason we picked Wilson Elementary School, it's a challenge. It's actually a school that instructs the kids that are in the orphanage, a local orphanage, and the kids that are actually living in a sexual assault and domestic violence shelter there in the Lawton area. So there's a lot of need. And what it exposes my soldiers to is that addiction to making a difference in people's lives. And that is a powerful addiction. If you've been to the third world, you know what a powerful addiction that can be. But I'll tell you, at all the leader development programs we have, going to those schools, going to those domestic violence and sexual assault shelters has the greatest impact. They see it as a one-way street. We're giving to them, Wilson Elementary School. We're getting so much more than, to be honest with you, I can possibly articulate here. Chief of Staff of the Army said that we have a problem with our sexual harassment and sexual assault culture in our organization. Just like if I thought I had an alcohol problem in our battalion, I would seek partnership with organizations that support people with alcohol issues. We reached out to a local women's shelter, and we actually not only provided maintenance to them, and in return, what would they do? They would supplement our domestic violence and sexual assault instruction. But we also figured out that since their entire staff was females, that the male children that would show up with their mothers, they wouldn't be exposed to positive male role models. So now, instead of just rebuilding their place that they have in their common area, when they have young children that are there, we go there, we interact with them in the common areas, and then we try and get them outside working on the playground, maintaining the area, so they're contributing members. They're taking pride in accomplishment, pride in their workmanship. they're contributing instead of just being a tenant at the Domestic Violence Center. Again, all these things just foster that positive addiction of making a difference in someone's lives. And the last one, AMBUCS. AMBUCS is an organization that's pretty large here in the Lawton area. They're an organization that creates walkways for soldiers that redeploy and their amputees. So we support them not just in terms of their fundraisers, but in terms of elbow grease. One, soldiers feel that making a difference, that addiction, but they're also get to be exposed to some great veterans that are coming back with some pretty significant disabilities. And again, it's all part of our leader development model. So I talked about alignment. It's important that you're aligned with your brigade commander, your division commander, with your message. I talked about what my last 10 years of experience, my life experience was in terms of what makes great teams. I talked about that line of leadership, the cause, and then some approach pieces. And again, it wasn't to cover everything today. It was just to continue a dialogue that Major General Funk started when he took command of 1st Infantry Division. Hopefully a dialogue that we can go ahead and share that light of leadership that'll spread across our Army. My goal today wasn't to necessarily create a bunch of disciples in here. My goal was to just get you thinking a little bit. All I did was I threw some seeds out in the field. Through our dialogue, future discussion, whether in here or at a later date, you can decide whether to water that field or not, and whether you want to harvest that wheat. But at least you have an opportunity now to do so. In closing, I just want to leave you with a quote from two great men. One of them's Paul Bear Bryant, the other one's my dad. My dad had a little picture on his wall, Paul Bear Bryant. It said, "The price of success in life is very high, but so are the rewards." And I remember I was reading it as a 10-year-old boy, and my dad came up to me and said, "You know, son, the rewards he speaks of is not treasure, money, or trophies. It's the respect and the loyalty and the love of the people that surround you." That's really stuck with me throughout my life. And I just want to say for my part, whether you're in here today or maybe watching this on video, you all have mine. I appreciate your attention.